Good evening and welcome to the 7 o'clock TV News Bulletin. I'm Ahmed Makki. We begin with the headlines where people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza as violence resumes after the end of a 3-day ceasefire. President Barack Obama defends the authorization of airstrikes on Iraq as the U.S. military conducted an airdrop of food and water for Iraqi citizens. Campaigning in Turkey's first direct presidential election enters its final day ahead of Sunday's vote. And Nigerian president declares the outbreak of Ebola a national emergency and approves funds to help contain the deadly virus. In local news, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Al-Jabr Al-Sabah sent a cable of thanks today to His Excellency the President of the People's Republic of Mongolia, Sahya Ebongdorj. His Highness the Emir expressed his utmost gratitude for the generosity and hospitality he received during his private visit to Mongolia. His Highness the Emir praised the friendly meeting he had with His Excellency the President, during which they exchanged views on various joint issues, particularly the distinctive Kuwaiti-Mongolian ties and ways to bolstering them. His Highness indicated that his best wishes of prosperity and progress to the head and people of Mongolia and further development in the relations between the two countries. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Al-Jabr Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Singapore, Tony Tan King Yam, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Ahmed Al-Jabr Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency the President of the Republic of Singapore, Tony Tan King Yam, on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Sheikh Jabir Mubarak Hamid Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable. The State of Kuwait, represented by the Kuwait Red Crescent Society, has delivered today medical aid to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society in Rafah on the Egyptian border to be distributed in the Gaza Strip's hospitals. Head of the Kuwait Red Crescent Society mission for the relief of the Palestinian people in Gaza, Khalid Zaid, stated that to Kuwait news agency Kuna that Kuwait medical aid to Gaza will not stop, whether through purchasing from the Palestinian market or by airlifting from Kuwait. Al-Zaid pointed out that Kuwaiti aircraft loaded with other medications will arrive tomorrow to be delivered to the Palestinian counterpart. Al-Zaid extended gratitude to the efforts exerted by the Egyptian authorities, the Egyptian Red Crescent Society and the Kuwaiti Embassy in facilitating their mission. He said that the Kuwait Red Crescent Society's efforts came in response to His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Ahmed Al-Jabr Al-Sabah directions to support and aid the brotherly Palestinian people following the barbaric Israeli aggression on Gaza. In other developments, the Israeli Justice Minister said that Israel must continue the strike back at attacks from Gaza, and not in the same proportion, but to greater degree. The comment comes after talks in Cairo were ongoing, but showed no signs of any imminent deal. Our reporter Dina Nasser has more in this following report.
5 people were killed in Israel airstrikes on Gaza when violence resumed after the end of a 3-day ceasefire yesterday. Israel claimed it's renewed its military offensive soon after the truce lapsed in response to rocket fire by Hamas. Israel launched more than 20 aerial attacks in Gaza today, killing 5 Palestinians, including 3 in the shelling of a mosque. Tensions have also been growing in the West Bank, where protesters clashed with Israeli troops. 2 Palestinians were shot dead over the last 2 days. The Israeli military said it struck 33 sites in Gaza today without specifying the targets. The fighting resumed after Israeli and Palestinian representatives failed to agree to a long-term truce at indirect talks in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Egypt, helped by American and European mediators, made no visible progress towards resuming a 72-hour ceasefire. Hamas said Israel failed to meet its key demands, including the lifting of the Gazan blockade and the release of prisoners. It also rejected Israel's call for the demilitarization of Gaza. Israeli officials said they would not negotiate under fire. Earlier, Amnesty International claimed it has evidence that Israel's military forces have specifically targeted hospitals, health workers, and ambulance personnel during the conflict. More than 1,900 Palestinians, mostly civilians, have been killed, according to the UN, since violence erupted in Gaza in early July. 67 people have died on the Israeli side.
The United Kingdom announced sending a team of National Health Services NHS medical experts to Gaza to help people who have been injured because of the fighting in the Gaza Strip. British Prime Minister David Cameron said in a statement that the team will be made up of doctors, nurses, surgeons and paramedics from the specialties of emergency medicine. They will be initially based with the medical aid for the Palestinians at the Maqasid Hospital east of Jerusalem. He added that the team's primary objective will be to treat people in the region as part of the commitment to the wider international humanitarian effort. Israeli warplanes pounded targets in Gaza a day after killing at least 5 Palestinians, and fighters fired dozens of rockets into Israel after attempts to extend a 3-day truce stalled. More with Majd Al-Wahidi from Gaza.
Another renewed Israeli airstrike and another round of deaths and destruction. At least 5 Palestinians died and dozens were injured after Israel targeted homes and mosques overnight in northern and eastern Gaza. Meanwhile, another body was found under the rubble. But this is not the first time. Since 1 month, the vast majority of casualties are civilians who died when their homes were bombarded by Israeli forces.
We're very disturbed by the fact that the Israeli army has failed to ensure that they can distinguish between civilian and military targets. This is very dangerous, and this has claimed the lives of most of the civilian casualties. To us, this type of attacks violate international law severely, and many of them amount to war crimes.
All of this happens while Egypt is currently mediating between Israelis and Palestinians in order to secure a truce. But so far, talks have failed. While Palestinians have made clear demands, Israel recalled its delegation and warned it would not negotiate under fire.
The 72-hour ceasefire collapsed yesterday as a result of Israeli insistence on not dealing seriously with the Palestinians' demands. The Palestinian delegation felt that Israel is wasting time and is not responding in a positive way to the Palestinians' demands, who are under extreme siege and have been suffering as a result of the devastation of the 4 weeks of Israeli aggression. And the Palestinians needed a quick answer to their demands, and that's why they decided unless Israel deal positively with the Palestinian demands, there will be no ceasefire.
As politicians debate and negotiate here in the streets of Gaza, houses are without water and electricity. People continue to pay a heavy price. For them, lifting the siege after this war is a chance to rebuild their lives once again. Observers say that the political and diplomatic war is harder and will take more time to produce its results than the war on ground. Many believe that this war is different, as it revealed that Israel is not only facing an enemy, but an entire population that wants to live a life on its own demands and ambitions. Majd Al-Wahidi, Kuwait TV, Gaza.
In another major topic, U.S. President Barack Obama said today that the United States cannot and should not interfere in every world crisis. Obama said in his weekly radio and internet address that he is discussing his justifications for authorizing airstrikes in Iraq, adding that the United States will continue with targeted strikes if necessary. Yesterday, the U.S. began launching airstrikes on fighters of the Islamic State IS in northern Iraq, adding that the airstrikes will be limited to support a humanitarian effort to provide food and water to thousands of starving refugees who have fled violence in different regions. U.S. President said that he won't allow the United States to be dragged into another war in Iraq. However, he said that he was willing to consider broader use of military strikes in Iraq to beat back militants with the cooperation of Iraqi political leaders. Meanwhile, Iraqi government warplanes bombed forces of the Islamic State IS militants as they were advancing towards positions manned by the Kurdish fighters near Sinjar in Nawana in northern Iraq today. The Iraqi Air Force planes reported an attempt by the Islamic State fighters to turn around the Peshmerga fighters that have been attempting to retake Sinjar. Meanwhile, U.S. military aircraft dropped humanitarian aid to Iraqis under threat from the hardline militants in northern Iraq for the second straight night. The Pentagon said in a statement released last night that the airdrop was conducted from multiple air bases within the United States Central Command area with a total of 72 bundles of supplies. The U.S. aircraft carrier positioned in the Gulf said that the cargo planes were accompanied by two F-18 fighter jets from the USS George W. Bush base. The UK has sent a plane to join the relief operations in Sinjar region, where thousands of refugees are stranded. Fighting between Pakistani security forces and supporters of an anti-government cleric killed 7 people in clashes today. Security forces blocked roads to Lahore and the site of the planned protest on Sunday by supporters of the cleric to protest the killing of 14 people in June in similar clashes. Many have been wounded in the violence which occurred after police blocked roads to the provincial capital Lahore. The cleric's supporters abducted 6 police officers in the latest violence in Punjab. The fighting began when the cleric's supporters tried to remove shipping containers being used by police as roadblocks, according to Rana Mashood, the provincial minister of Punjab. Elsewhere, campaigning in Turkey's first direct presidential election is entering its final day ahead of Sunday's vote. Candidate and current Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan is due to hold his final rally in the central Anatolian city of Konya. Erdogan is still struggling with the mine tragedy in which 301 miners were killed, was widely criticized, and he has steered clear of an area during his campaign. The post of the president, previously chosen by parliament and largely ceremonial, is being put to a popular vote for the first time. Meanwhile, Kurdish candidate Salahuddin Demirtas held the biggest rally of his campaign in Turkey's largest Kurdish city of Diyarbakir. Tens of thousands of people waving Kurdish flags to hear him speak. The winner must get more than 50% of the vote. If no candidate reaches this mark in the first round, a runoff will be held on the 24th of August. In a statement, Moscow dismissed Ukraine, said that it had headed off an attempt by Russia to send the troops into Ukraine and a goose of peacekeepers with the aim of provoking a large-scale military conflict. Ukraine has made several statements about Russian aggression during months of conflict with separatists on its eastern border with Russia that it says are backed by Moscow, none of which have been independently verifiable. The head of the NATO, Andris Vogramesons, called Russia to pull its troops back from the Ukrainian border and warned further intervention in Ukraine would mean greater isolation from the rest of the world. Meanwhile, the mayor of Kiev has taken to the lead in work to dismantle the final barrier and tents on the Ukrainian capital's main street 9 months after pro-EU demonstrators took to the streets. The new government is battling incursions by pro-Russian separatist rebels in a conflict that is believed to cost at least 1,500 lives since April. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Myanmar ahead of a regional security forum he will attend this weekend. Kerry is in Myanmar seeking to calm tensions in the South China Sea between China and its smaller neighbors. Also today, foreign ministers from ASEAN started their individual meetings with their counterparts from dialogue countries. The regional bloc met separately with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-si. ASEAN member states like Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei, and Malaysia have overlapping territorial claims with China in the South China Sea. And the U.S. Relief Organization, whose workers contracted Ebola, has welcomed the World Health Organization's WHO classification of the spread of the virus as an international health emergency. The outbreak first emerged in Guinea and spread to the neighboring Sierra Leone and Liberia before reaching Nigeria. Some residents of Sierra Leone's capital earlier today complained that the local economy is suffering on the back of preventive emergency measures of Ebola. Meanwhile, Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan has declared an outbreak of Ebola a national emergency and approved more than $11 million to help contain it. The outbreak in West Africa has already killed almost 1,000 people since March and is spreading to hold a death rate of about 50%. That's all the news for tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Before we leave you tonight, here is a reminder of the headlines. 5 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes on Gaza as violence resumes after the end of the 3-day ceasefire. President Barack Obama defends the authorization of airstrikes on Iraq as the U.S. military conducted an airdrop of food and water for Iraqi citizens. Campaigning in Turkey's first direct presidential election enters its final day ahead of Sunday's vote. And Nigerian president declares the outbreak of Ebola a national emergency and approves funds to help contain the deadly virus.